Hey, what's up, it's Black Moon, here with another short tutorial video. A friend of mine asked me how I did the intro to a track I did called Drifting. This is on my tape sync that I just put out. It's on Spotify at the moment. It's also on like Google Play, Pandora. I have it on SoundCloud if you want to listen to that. It's also on Bandcamp. It's basically everywhere, and it's going to come out on more sites as the processing gets kicked in. But today we're going to go over not just the intro, might as well go over the whole thing because there's some strange things going on here, like some automation that honestly is a little ridiculous, and I just did it for the art of doing it. As you can see, there are no set shapes for a lot of my patterns. They just kind of are because I like doing stuff like that. But with this intro, we have this piano sample that I found online. I don't know if people are sampling from songs they find on YouTube, but another good source is Looperman. It's completely free. People go to that website just to post royalty-free samples that they made. They like, if you've ever played a piano and you found a melody and you're just like, wow, this is really cool, but you never wanted to use it, or you never found a reason to use it, or you couldn't find proper context for it, post it on Looperman. If it's any good, someone's gonna use it. They'll make a track out of it. If you're lucky, they'll comment back and say, hey, I used your sample, this is what I did it for, which gives them kind of like a pat on the back for it's like, hey, thank you for providing this for me, which is the thing I need to go back and do because a lot of my stuff is sample based, and that's another thing that I feel like people need to understand too. Like if you look in here, it's practically all samples except for trying to think. Yeah, even like this one right here is a sample too. Like it's primarily samples with this, and there's nothing wrong with that because hip hop was built off of sampling. This one though was this is the bass track I did myself. I did my own bass for this, but most of it is sampling, slicing, just making sure things sound right in context. And context is one of the most important things because something can sound good on its own, but if everything around it sounds good too, but it doesn't fit, then what are you doing? You didn't really make music, you just put stuff together. But anyway, so we're gonna get into this. The what I did was I reversed it. I added gross beat. There's a low pass filter right here, and then there's a sequence for this that I will show you in just a second. But first, I'm gonna take off all my effects on this alone, and then let you know what it sounds like normally. And like right here. And with that, most people probably use this sample for like a transition of some sort in the middle of a track, or they'd use it for like a bridge. But me, I was thinking like, why do that? I could do something really weird with it, so I thought, why not get extra? So I reversed it again, even though even though the sample's already reversed in itself, it's a reverse piano. I decided I'm gonna re-reverse it, and since it was reversed, you can still hear the tails on the track because I'm assuming they put some reverb on it too, which is what it sounds like, reverb or like a light delay on it, because there's still tails for every note. It doesn't hit like as cleanly as it could. So if I just reverse it back, well, if I reverse it from my end as opposed to trying to reverse it back, it sounds like this. And you can hear it when I put the other things on, like but just put the low pass filter on it. But remember, it's also automated. And the automation for me is another thing because sometimes I like to break it up into blocks. Like you can see this goes right until the second bar. This one drops off a bit at the third bar, then drops off completely right before you go into the third bar. And then at the fourth I have this little section here, and then the wave comes right back down into nothingness. And for this one, it's just a straight block, but that's just because it's a different type of VST, different types of filtering techniques. It depends on what you're doing. It's all context driven. Like, that is the main thing I feel like people need to understand with music. Again, just context. Context is so important. But so with that, I also added gross beat onto it, which adds which with this it's a little bit of a repeat, and I tried to keep the patterns somewhat similar but a little different and right next to each other just because it fit well in my opinion. So playing that with the gross beat added, So it adds a little bit more movement to the track, and then if I go in here and add the glitch, you get back to where we were before, which is what we're really going to talk about, which is this sequence right here. And with that, it kind of sounds like if you couldn't start your car in the morning and your engine's giving you troubles. But then in the end, you can kind of figure it out. But so what I have here is Deep Blue Glitch, which is just free VST I found online. That I don't know if there's a lot of people using it, but I feel as though not many people use it because they don't know how to use it tastefully. And that's a serious problem, because if you can use an effect, cool, but if you can't use the effect properly, you probably shouldn't touch it. But this is a little bit extra, because this is just the intro. Like this just, I mean, the rest of the track is pretty tame compared to this intro, because the intro to me was like the main point. I wanted to grab people in here. So how I did that was, first I have a reverser into the sequence, and each of these is split up into bars. So this is the first bar, and of course you got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then second bar, third bar, fourth bar. So I have a reverser which has the left signal and the right signal for the stereo sound, both 100% reversed, again, because why not? There's a lot of reversing going on. Again, it sounds ridiculous until you put it into context and you think, well, this sounds good based on what I've already done to it, or what can I do to take this further. And then with that, then I have the third bar, which is almost completely nothingness until you get about like an eighth right before the fourth bar, and they have a retrigger. It's at 8 for the speed, which I don't know what they use for units. That would have been really helpful, but we don't happen to have it, so I just put it where I thought it sounded good, and I went with that. And then the length, I put it at 85. Again, you don't need like mathematical principles, or you don't need a special number for things. If something sounds good, how you put it, leave it. Don't try to make it fit your ideal image of music. If you like how it sounds, go for it. It'll be good. You'll be happy. But with that, I have that retrigger into a shuffler, and the shuffler will move the notes around. So let's say you played C, B, G. If you have a shuffler, it might be B, C, G, or something else of that nature. It uses the same notes, but it'll pull points and then it'll move things around for you, which again kind of creates more movement, because you can change a whole section just by using this one effect. But again, you gotta use these things tastefully. So I have this, and it's at a 1 step minimum, 2 steps maximum. The range about 50%, and then the amount 100%. I didn't want to hear any like notes trailing or anything. I wanted the whole note that was grabbed. And then after that, into another retrigger, about the same amount, and then into a modulator, which changes the frequency of the note, which is why you get that loud sort of dial tone type of sound. And then into another retrigger that's twice as long as these. So it's like retrigger, shuffle, retrigger, modulate, retrigger for a little bit longer, and then tape stop. And the tape stop is kind of like a rewind sound. You can slow it down, speed it up, or add a delay to it. And for me, like, I think for a lot of my tracks, I use the slowdown more than I use the speed up, in the sense that like this one is usually higher in ratio than this one. And that's just because when I use it, I'm not using it to stop a track. Usually I'm using it to transfer sections. So this was my transition right here, just this sequence. And despite the fact that the sequence is here, like, it really didn't take effect until the end of the third bar, for the most part, because this, you barely even notice that. Especially with gross beat going on, the fact that it's low pass and there's an automation filter right there, like, there's a lot going on through your brain. You don't really latch on to every single thing, but there's so much happening. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to just get into make a whole video about it. And then here, it's not a lot of crazy stuff. Like, that's not much going on with that. Just looking at it. Oh wait, no, I moved that. That's funny. And then with that, of course, I used isotope vinyl, some more EQing, gross beat, and a lot of that was just ended up going into sequencing that I was trying to figure out. I mean, you can do a lot of wild things with it. Let me see. With this, I have one sequence, and on top of that, I have just nothing. Sometimes I like to load a second VST of something just to test it out, and then I can turn one off, use that one, or if like, oh well, this one sounds better here, and then if I like one version of a filter in one spot and another version of it in a different spot, then just automate each one. You can leave them on the same track so long as you automate properly, which again is something that takes a bit of learning. Like, I wouldn't say too much, because if it sounds bad, you'll notice it before anyone else notices it, because hopefully you'll notice it before you release the track, or before you have someone else listen to it, because that's embarrassing. But other than that, I mean, it's a pretty simple, straightforward track for the most part. I have a P controller, which is here, and that controls the bass frequencies. So what happens is it'll sidechain, so you can see that. And that also handles the piano. Well, it's more of a Rhodes than a piano. It's kind of like a light synth in the background, because you still have this beginning sample going on here. It just doesn't have the D blue glitch or really much of the low pass filter automation going on, because there's nothing there. Like, there's no automation happening there, but you can still hear it in context and everything. Everything's still reversed. Just using the same sample without this crazy transition, because now I'm into the brunt of the track, the main point. And then with that, I have this, which is just something I love doing, where you can sort of you can automate it as much as you want and make it sound wild, and it's just a low pass filter that keeps going in and out. And then with certain transitions, like, you don't really have to do crazy effects in order to have a section like this one. The drums just dropped out, but it still sounds fine. Like, you can just drop instruments entirely if you do it properly. And then when I did that, like, I knocked it right into the low pass filter automation, so it's just like, oh, right here it kicks up, then you get back into this up and down, and then there's a slight one right here. But I feel like another thing that you need to understand is that when you're sampling stuff, latch on to certain parts of the sample. Like, figure out which sections you like, and then enhance those, or cut sections you don't like out entirely, or whatever, like, however you want to do it. But like, definitely don't use, well, I'm not gonna say don't use the entire sample, but if you want to get more involved with it, take parts of it and then do whatever you want. Like, with FL Studio, you can use Fruity Slicer, you can use Gross Beat, of course there's D blue glitch. You can use well, I'll link D blue glitch too, because I feel like it's something people need to understand, that like, that's there. There's a tool out there that's completely free that you can do crazy stuff with, and I love the VST entirely because it's just so cool. Like, there's even a bit crusher, and if you make hip hop music, you probably heard of lo-fi at least once. And you can get bit crusher samples, then you can make some strange stuff, and you can go for it. There's gators, there's delay, stretcher, the stuff I already showed you. Like, there's a lot of cool stuff out there that people need to use. But yeah, most of the track is sample based. I did the bass line. I have a 5-string that I play, and I recorded that in a different program, because FL isn't necessarily the most user friendly when it comes to recording audio tracks. Usually you have to load up Edison, record it there, and then load that track somewhere else, and really I just used another program to do it. I have Mixcraft on my computer. You could also just use Audacity, in all honesty, and then mix it down to a wave, import it to this, and I mean, Audacity is free. if you have an instrument, want to record something into a track, you don't necessarily have to do it this way. I like recording MIDI into FL, but when it comes to recording audio direct, I don't do it. But other than that, I mean, this track is that's basically me explaining everything that goes into it. Isotope vinyl's nice, just because it ages tracks a little bit. I mean, people swear against it, and I understand why, because there are better VSTs out there that'll do the same thing, but this is the one I've learned how to use, and personally, it's done everything I've needed it to. I haven't had a reason not to use it. That's another free VST that I can link below. And I believe that to be it, really. I mean, none of this other stuff is really all that interesting. Let me see. Probably not. I mean, yeah, no, it's just probably just, it's all just, EQing, 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 which is an important thing. If you get a sample, if you get a drum sample that you like, you can probably still make it better. Like, still, you can change the attack, the decay, or all of that. I didn't change it on these. That's just how the default looks. But, it's a lot. And even, like, when this reverse button, like, there's not a lot of people reversing samples anymore. So, capitalize on that. Find a sample you like, reverse it, make it better, do something weird so no one else even knows that, like what was that? And they're gonna look at your track more. They're gonna check your music out more because you did something strange that they don't understand. And they'll hope you do it again. They'll hope. They won't say anything about it, but they'll definitely hope you do it again. But that's it. That's basically all I gotta say about this track. It's a pretty simple one. It's a pretty short one. I like it a lot. And that's it. Thanks for watching.